Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with Review Masterclass. Oh, this is so much fun. This is where you all decide to review something, and you send it to me, and I will possibly, I can't promise, but possibly select it to go over and rip it to pieces. No, to make constructive suggestions on how to improve your budding critical faculties, how to write a good review, because it's not easy, especially a review in no more than 3 pithy paragraphs, which is one of the requirements for this little test here. Well, we have a very interesting example that I'm going to take you through. Joseph Marx's Herbstsymphonie, which is the Autumn Symphony. It is a huge late romantic, slush fest of a piece that has received very, very few recordings. And so here we go. And this is a good review, by the way. It needs some work, but it's basically pretty good and concise. But let's see how we can tighten it up even a little bit more and perhaps give more of a sense of where this particular release stands in the list of very few extant recordings. So it's the Autumn Symphony with Joseph Wildner and the Graz Philharmonic on CPO. Here we are. Joseph Marx's Eine Herbstsymphonie has got to be the most luxuriant late romantic sound bath ever. Well, it is one of those for sure. Here, thanks to Joseph Wildner and the Graz Philharmonic, it finally gets its first uncut commercial recording. Botstein's is shorn, thank you, of about 12 minutes. Avoid. I agree with that, by the way. If one can't get enough of sinking into the overstuffed divans, sofas in other words, of Schrecker, Zemlinsky, Korngold, Delius, and Scriabin, perhaps one has speculated on what a work amalgamating those luxurious styles would be like. Well, here it is, combining the restless modulations of Austro-German late romanticism, the pantheistic nature rhapsodies of Delius, the quivering ecstasy of Scriabin, and more. Hyper-romantic intensity never lets up, as one gorgeous strand succeeds another, embedded in the lushest overlays of overripe counterpoint imaginable. This is Gustav Klimt transformed into music. It's a wonderful analogy, by the way. A sunset prolonged into an autumnal glow of well over an hour. Okay, that's the first paragraph. I like it for the most part. I think it could be tightened up a little because you keep saying it's big and lush and luxurious, over and over again. For example, when you begin with the combining the restless modulations of Austro-German late, the pantheistic nature stuff of Delius, you can start with that sentence. You can get rid of sinking into the overstuffed divans of Schrecker, Zemlinsky, Korngold, Delius, and Scriabin, because you're going to expand on that in the very next sentence. So maybe pruning that out a little will give it a little bit more concision while losing absolutely nothing in describing what the music sounds like. You can do that very easily, but otherwise it's a perfectly fine first paragraph. Now, the second paragraph is brief and runs into some trouble. Here it is. Nevertheless, Marx's symphony is not just a sound bath. Okay, you've said that a couple times already, but, you could come up with some, other sort of, musical exordium, effusion of something, you'll come up with some adjective. Even the loveliest sounds begin to pall if there is no underlying structure. It's built out of several themes that help the work to hang together. Particularly memorable is a pentatonic motive that one can play on the black keys of a keyboard instrument. Starting on the rightmost key of any group of 2 black keys, play the 4 black keys going left, E flat, D flat, B flat, A flat, period. That's the second paragraph. Okay, get rid of it. It's totally unnecessary. Well, you can keep the first sentence. You can say that you make a valid point, which is that, all of this lushness can pall in excess if it doesn't have something to hold it together. But you could say it's held together by a pentatonic motive consisting of the notes bloop, 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 bloop. That's all you need to say. Most people know what pentatonic motives are. If they don't, they can look it up. The point is that the notes will speak for themselves as to what a pentatonic thing is, and you don't have to go into that kind of description. No one's going to run to the piano and go, blah, 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 blah. Totally unnecessary. So keep the first sentence. You can add it to the second, either the end of the first paragraph or the beginning of the second. You don't really need 3 paragraphs here, I don't think. So that's one little area that needs to be trimmed out. You have to be a little bit careful when you start to describe these things. Also, the question is not, what is the pentatonic motive? It's great that you identify it, but just how audible it is in the crazy melange of textures and colors, which is the actual work. I mean, I happen to have the score, and I know, I'm speaking from experience, that the piece is almost entirely shapeless as it sounds to the listener, unless perhaps you point out, as you do, that there is something to listen for. And it might have been more helpful to say, if you wanted to add a sentence and keep a second paragraph saying, there's a pentatonic motive containing bloopity, 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 bloop, which you can hear most readily at 2 minutes and 50 seconds in the first movement, or here in the scherzo, or there in the slow movement. In other words, really focus it. If what you're trying to prove is that the piece actually does have a shape and does have a form, then give us a couple pointers as to where we can hear that form, not just in general. I think that would be really helpful, and you'd be able to preserve a relatively brief second paragraph by using some cogent musical examples that would really help people who are listening and getting to know the work for the first time. So that's that. Next, third paragraph. You ready? This welcome world premiere commercial recording by Joseph Wildner and the Graz Philharmonic is very well, a little pointy thing got in the way. Very well played and recorded. However, although it sounds ungrateful, the world premiere live recording by Michael Swerchewski and the Recreation Grosses Orchestra of Graz, for some reason they're all in Graz, aren't they, is preferable. Swerchewski's tempi are broader, which in a piece like this is all to the good. He gives the lush lyricism the room it needs to expand and make its full effect. Very good point also. This also gives the listener more time to appreciate Marx's luxuriant impasto, yet point to point ductus never sags. Okay, you got to speak English here. Point to point ductus never sags. Well, you just say appreciate Marx's luxuriant impasto without ever sagging. Without the tempo ever sagging, without the music, without dead spots. There's a million ways to say it, but the point-to-point ductus doesn't help us. Thank you. The sound is excellent, although occasionally one runs into inexplicably noisy versions on YouTube. Not necessary. You can take that out. Swerchewski's used to be available as downloads from his website, Mac Music. Well, it is or it isn't. And if you don't know where it is, be honest and just say it may not be available, so this may be your only choice. You don't want to frustrate people. You have to be very direct and just say either you can get it here or it may be hard to find and this may be your only choice. Wildner's is a good way to wet your feet, but one really must go for the Swerchewski if one can find it. Alice's observation about scented rushes, the prettiest are always further, seems apt. No, just get rid of it. It doesn't say anything useful. You just say you have to get that one if you can find it. And you don't have to get into Alice and things like that, which is very unhelpful. And then we have Eine Herbstsymphonie is a must. Well, now you've got must in all caps twice in 2 sentences. So no. You say it's essential for late romantic junkies. Don't hesitate to make the acquaintance of this extraordinary piece, period. All right. So it's a good, solid review. It just needs some trimming, some alternation in word choice, a little bit of assistance in that respect. And I also think that you should ask yourself, really, really carefully, and I'm not prejudging because this is reviewer's choice. I mean, so I'm not going to say whether it's good or bad. Do you really want to bring out Swieczewski's performance if nobody can find it? I mean, of a work that nobody knows, that no one's going to really know if it's a good performance or a less good performance, if the comparison that you're making is a helpful one. You could mention it and say there was one that I marginally prefer for its slightly broader tempos, and there you go. But what you're saying is, no, you have to hear this one because the one I'm reviewing does not represent the work in the best possible way, while at the same time you're recommending it because people aren't going to have a choice. So it's a delicate balance that you have to thread. It's good to mention the fact that Swieczewski exists because it means that you've done your homework. It gives you credibility as a critic, which is always a good thing. But on the other hand, you have to be practical and say, if you really are pushing the work and you want people to get to know Marx's music and get to know this particular piece, and this is the only show in town other than Botstein, then you're going to recommend it anyway. So you don't want to dog it too much. You want to just say, some people may prefer the broader tempo, others may prefer the quicker tempo. I mean, you got to be a little bit careful there because you're getting into a very subjective statement about which version is going to impress itself upon the listener more effectively. And most listeners will not have had your experience of hearing Swieczewski first and imprinting on that, and then only later hearing this new one, which you find to be wanting compared to the earlier one. So in other words, your experience has to be brought to bear in evaluating this, but it can't be so dispositive as to discourage potential listeners. That's my final word on this particular review, and it's food for thought when you're talking about unfamiliar music of which there are very few recordings, and you know them well. Remember who your audience is, who you're writing for, and what you want from them. You want them to get to know this music. So you have to be honest, but you also have to be reasonable. And so give that some thought as you ponder this whole thing. But really a very good effort, and I thank the reader. I don't do names basically because some people don't like to be mentioned by name, but I really appreciate this. This was a fine, well thought review that basically made all the right points. It's just a question of cleaning up the style, cleaning up the review, and then giving it that extra bit of consideration for the reader. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.